I've been in many houses where the mother smoked, and one of my own kids' mother was addicted to cocaine and smoking. So my son came out perfectly normal, and, you know, he doesn't have any problems. And I never saw a crack baby, and I told him I never saw a baby shaking and all the things that they were saying that happen in crack babies. I never agreed with that. But some said I wouldn't because I was responsible.
Yeah, well, for sure. Well, I mean, yesterday, I mean, driving around Skid Row, and actually, I mean, and be totally honest, I actually got a really cool police officer. He was open-minded, and you know, we actually had some really honest, open-minded, yeah, conversations about legalization and you know different things that could happen, and you know, and we're sitting here driving around on these streets in Skid Row where it's just a war zone. It's an absolute war zone, and you know these people have to admit that whatever we're doing isn't working. You know.
Right.
And yet...
But they can't even keep drugs out of the prison system. You know, they have guys in prison that ODs and things of that nature. Even in the hole. I've known of guys to be inside the hole and OD. You know, this is like the lockdown, no prisoner-to-prisoner contact, you know, no prisoner-to-prisoner contact, and have OD.
Well, that's just it. I mean, and these guys, I mean, you know, we're talking about the Amsterdam model, you know, of of just decriminalization. And I'm sitting there saying, well, you know, like if a guy can buy a $20, you know, crack rock out here, what if he could get his like pharmaceutical grade crack from a physician or a doctor? He has to prove that he's an addict. He has to prove he's a junkie, and he has to smoke it around them. But what if it was all controlled by experts? And you because another thing, we interviewed a lot of junkies yesterday. And every single one of them, it's like, look, they're going to, no matter what you do, they're going to do it. You're not going to stop them from doing it.
Right, because they don't have a reason to stop.
And so it's like, you know, the whole thing about like, well, we're going to try to stop everybody from doing drugs by controlling the flow of drugs, how that's never going to work.
They can't, Kevin. They can't lock their way out of it, because you know what happens with guys here? There's guys here that's doing 20, 25 years, and guess what they say they're going to do as soon as they get out?
Do drugs.
Start selling drugs.
Yep.
Some of them are mad, you know, because they got so much time, and some of them just don't have nothing else to go home to.
Well, what's interesting, too, yesterday is that I was, you know, I'm talking about comparing, you know, why is it that crystal meth seems to be so big in rural areas and not so much in the city? And, you know, and it's weird because in Skid Row, you have all these really poor people, and most of them are doing heroin and smoking crack right around that area. And, you know, all the police always say, well, the reason crystal meth is so popular is because it's, like, cheap and it lasts for 12, 24 hours. And so I'm sitting there going, well, if that's the only reason, then why isn't everybody in Skid Row doing it? And when we interviewed this one guy on the street, and the policeman asked him, well, what's your favorite drug? You know, he said crystal meth. And I said, well, wait a minute, let me ask the question differently. And I said, look, if you could afford...
I didn't hear what you said.
I said, well, we were asking this junkie, you know, what was his favorite drug, and he said crystal meth. And I said, well, and the policeman was asking him that, and I said, well, let me ask him the question differently. I said, if you had the money to do any drug you wanted, like let's say money wasn't an object, let's say you could have a big old bag of cocaine or a big bag of crystal meth, which would you take? He said, oh, well, the cocaine, of course. You know, and it's like, well, who wouldn't? I mean, it's way better. I mean, it's a way better high.
Yeah.
And that just goes to show you that the drug war is causing people to migrate towards crystal meth.
Right, and because it's a cheaper drug and it lasts longer, but it deteriorates the body much worse. If you see somebody come in who's been strung out on crystal meth, they look terrible.
Well, not only that, but the people on crystal meth are known to shoot police. They're known to be 10 times more violent.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the violence factor in crystal meth is way higher. Man, when they go to bust up meth labs, they're often booby-trapped with bombs and guns. And people that do crystal meth are incredibly paranoid.
Yeah, I didn't know that. But I know it's taken over.
Yeah, but that's just it, though. It's taking over, but when you go to a place like Skid Row, it's not. Heroin and crack are still bigger in Skid Row. I mean, what do you think about that?
That's strange because I know cocaine is more expensive than crystal meth, and also heroin is more expensive. But I guess those guys are what you probably would call diehard cocaine and heroin addicts, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get their high, and they're going to stick. Some people just won't switch drugs. You know, once they have a drug of choice, they stick with it.
Well, don't you think though that also, if you're like down and out, like the kind of people that would end up in Skid Row would probably rather dampen their spirits? You know, that the kind of people that are going to want to numb themselves more, and that's kind of heroin and even crack lend themselves more to like numbing your spirit.
But that is numbing. Anytime you take a drug, you're hiding from reality. You're not dealing with what's really going on.
No, I know. I agree with that, but I think when you do crystal meth, it's more of like making it amplifies everything.
Well, yeah, but after a while, you become mummified.
Yeah.
You know, just like cocaine, where they really don't know what's going on and they don't care what's going on. All they want to do is get high.
Right.
Get high and what they call tweak. You know, like some of the guys, they tell me about the stories that once they get high, they want to paint and clean and, you know, just stay occupied. Just keep their mind, you know, going somewhere, even if it's nowhere.
Okay, well, here's a more philosophical question. It's going to come around to one I've asked you before.
Okay.
I mean, if they're using the drug war to kind of protect the interests of the prisons, alcohol industry, tobacco industry, pharmaceutical industry. I mean, how is the drug war a tool used to propagate kind of the white man agenda?
Well, I think that it's definitely hurting minorities because we're the majority in here. We're especially like blacks, we're like 12% of the population. But with 65% of the people that they're putting in jail. And we get more time than anybody else, and we usually have the least amount of drugs. Crack cocaine is 100 to 1 to powder cocaine because they know that more blacks, well, not more blacks use crack cocaine, but more blacks get arrested for crack cocaine because statistics say that more whites use crack cocaine. So when you start to add all that up, you look at that it's a racist system. And then on top of that, when you go to court, like with me, when I went to trial, the only black that was inside the courtroom that had anything to do with the case were all my co-defendants and myself. Nobody else in the courtroom even resembled us. So, you know, when you start to add all that up, it starts to look racist, and to us, it really feels racist. You know that it's a racist society that we're dealing with.